بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. All right, so we have today in our session Brother Wali, Rizvi. And Wali, just to give you some background, we have been doing these sessions. I think this is our 16th session, and the idea is to expose these kids who are in high school or college to different careers. Oftentimes we have an overrepresentation of doctors, engineers, IT people in our community, and that tends to be the dominant model of career that you find. And so we wanted to just highlight some of the other careers that are out there. And alhamdulillah, the participants have been really eager, and I think they've also seen the benefit and the wisdom, even if they're not interested in the particular career. But it's been fascinating to hear how people have gone through their process of choosing career, sometimes struggling, sometimes pivoting from something to something, and all of that I think adds perspective, and they're able to see all the possibilities out there in life, and maybe get some wisdom for how they envision their own journey as it unfolds. And then we're focusing not only on career, like in the formal sense, but also we've done a couple of sessions with women who have chosen to become homemakers. And that's also, I know, something I want to emphasize, that's a very important and maybe even a better career option for women, at least a very viable one. And not only for the women, but also the men should see that and see that maybe that's the kind of wife I want to marry, for instance. Like, so those are things I want the kids to come away with. So yeah, today we're going to talk to Wali, and he is a CPA. That's the one thing I can understand very clearly from your resume. And so yeah, let's find out a little bit about what you do. If you want, I don't know if you want to start by describing your job, like kind of the career or the job that you do, or if you want to tell us kind of a story of how you got into it, why you're interested in it. I think either of those would be a good starting point. And then the kids will, they'll have questions inshallah as well, and we'll engage in conversation around it.
Definitely. So I'll sort of give a little bit of an overview of what I do currently, and then I'll start from like my high school days and college days, like how I thought through.
Yeah.
So currently, I'm a senior manager at PwC, and PwC does three things. They do audit, tax, and advisory. I'm in advisory or consulting. Those two words are interchangeable. And what I do is basically when big companies, they go through major events, as in they could go through a public offering, which is basically a private company becoming a public company. A public company is something like where their stock is traded, or if a company acquires another company or merges with another company. When a company goes through these significant changes, they have to do accounting and reporting related to these significant events. And that is where I come in. Basically, the group that I work in, we help big companies to do accounting for these major events, because a lot of the times these companies do not have the skills and the experience to basically get everything right when they're trying to account and report for these like major transactions, significant events in a company's life cycle. So that is what I do currently. I have been in accounting. I've been in the profession for about 8 years at this point. My first 4 years were in the audit practice, which is I was basically doing. I was auditing bigger companies, and then the last 4 years have been in advising companies instead of auditing. So that's how my career has been so far. So I'll start a little bit. So when I was going through high school, I wanted to do something related to business, and I think the two more interesting fields for me were finance and accounting and economics. So these three fields: economics, finance, and accounting. And I'll just give you a brief overview, since some of you may or may not have taken some of these classes.
Yeah.
So basically, economics is about how does an economy function, how what is the reason, and how is the behavior of an economy or of a business or of an individual determined? So demand and supply, right? You're talking about national GDP, you're talking about national debt. But that's what economics is. It's very big picture behavior level analysis, right? Finance is basically it's basically, okay, how do you make the most out of your money? So you have certain resources, and you have a given amount of money. You need to make a big car purchase. You need to make a big house purchase. You need to make a big you need to basically plan for your retirement, right? And this is at the personal level, but at the macro level, at the company level, it's very similar. Like, how do I build a new factory? I need money for that. I need to basically hire 2,000 employees. I need money for that, and so on and so forth. So how do you do that planning? Like, how can the banks help you? How can other parties? So that's the study of finance. Accounting is more so like, an event has happened. Something has happened out there, your business, you did something. And then accounting is more about how you truly and faithfully basically represent it and report it on a piece of paper. So something is happening last year or last month or last quarter. What is the most faithful and useful way to basically report it to relevant stakeholders? So let's just say Apple, the company, every quarter, at the end of every quarter, they basically publish their quarterly report, which says how much money they made or how much money they lost, what sort of assets they own, or what sort of loans do they owe to the banks. That's accounting. So these are three different fields. I was most interested at that. My most interested fields were economics and accounting. But when I graduated from high school, the country was going through one of the worst financial crises in the last 70 to 80 years. That was like 2008 is when I got out of like high school, and 2009 was when I was like freshman going into college. And it was a time where like teachers were losing jobs. There were graduates who were doing who were working at Walmart at $8 an hour, $9 an hour. The situation was not great. People were struggling, to put it very simply. What happened was, I went to a community college. I did year one, I was undecided. Year two, I was still undecided. And then basically when I went to NIU, I was still undecided. Like, that's NIU is a 4-year college. Right? So then I basically looked at, okay, like on campus, who is coming to recruit for accounting majors and who's coming to recruit for economics majors. The reality was, in that time frame, no one was hiring economics majors and no one was hiring finance majors. Like, there were very few opportunities for, and more so at NIU, like that wasn't really happening, right? So that was one factor. The other factor that I looked into was the earning trajectory. So there is earning potential, and then there is earning trajectory. Like, how do you earn? Like, how much? What's your skill? So like, you're going to start out. So I'll give you an example, right? You go in technology, right out of college, you're going to make $100,000, right? And you're going to go 100, 100,000, 120, 130, 150, 170, 80, and you're going to cap over there, unless you do something monumentally different. So you get capped. In a lot of professions, you get capped. So accounting profession is like, you start out really low. Like, in today's world, you're going to start out 60, which is low for today's world. In my day, you would start out at like 45, 50. But then you're like, when you're in the profession for 5 years, then like in today's day and age, by 5 years, you're like 140. By 10 years, you're like 240, 220. And then by 15 years, you're 300 or something. Like, there is a way to basically go up. So the first factor was, okay, who was hiring? The second factor was, okay, what's the earning trajectory that I was that I was interested in. Now I'll pause here for a second. So I mentioned two factors that were money related. Number one, who was hiring, and number two, earning potential. Now, that's not to say that someone should pursue something purely because of money, but very seldom does it happen that you know the exact major that you want to take or the exact profession you want to go into. Like generally people have 2, 3, 4 choices. Like I want to do A, B, C, or D, right? Like that's what. So I sort of knew my A, B, and C, like economics, accounting, and finance, right? Like, and it was really between A and B, economics and accounting, right? So now to choose between the two, I basically, money was a deciding, like earning potential was a deciding factor. Hiring practices in that time were a deciding factor, right? So that's how I got to, and I still have siblings who are early in their college career, cousins who are early in their college careers, and they ask me a lot of times. It's very rare that you would find someone who would know the major or this is what I want. Like, I mean, that does not happen very often. Generally, you have 2 to 3, some people 4 to 5 areas that they're interested in, right? Once you have those 2 to 5 areas, right, then you could drill down. Like you could use different sort of like criteria to basically decide what you want to do, right? What's good for my family, what's good for me financially, from a health perspective, so on and so forth, right? So I guess I'll just
Wali, can I just ask you about the choices?
Sure.
So like from the outside, like money, accounting, these kinds of things sound like maybe they sound a little bit boring or tedious or something like that. What was it that interested you? Was it like was it math that interested you, or what was it that attracted you to these kinds of things?
I would say I was always more so interested. It wasn't what interested me was it was the general concept of basically business that interested me. I was generally good at math. I was also decent at science, but I always found it very I still found it very inspiring, like that people like Michael Dell, people like I wouldn't say Steve Jobs for a few reasons, but you have people like Michael Dell, you have people like Jeff Bezos, you have people like Mark Cuban. These are people who've basically in their lives have used business to solve problems of societal problems, or basically give society a better product, right? Of course, you have to be within certain ethical bounds. So that's what's inspired. So I wanted to know. So that inspired my thought towards business. Okay, business is what I want to be in. And like when you're talking about business, there are about 6 to 7 majors that you could do within business, accounting and economics being 2 of those 6 or 7 businesses. So that's how my thought came about.
But you didn't go into the actual business, like doing the business or building the business. You went into accounting, which is something that it's like a tool that what business would use to keep track of money, and yeah.
That's right. That's how things eventually came out to be so far. But yeah, you're right. Like the actual thing that inspired me was just the thought of being a business major, and then within business, I chose accounting.
And then was it very interesting to you, or was the economics and the money potential that was mainly the driver?
So from an interest perspective, economics as a major was more interesting, and accounting was second. So yeah, economics was more interesting, but accounting was interesting in a way because like just one event, if a single event happens, like there are so many ways to present it. There are so many different ways how you could account for it or report for it. And that was really what that was the part of accounting that was interesting to me. And and then within accounting, the other thing that I was going to talk was basically the profession of auditing. So it was accounting, and then basically the next thing that I was going to talk about is like the big thing in accounting that interested me was the profession of auditing, to basically go in and audit a company. So the whole American economic system, not just American, like, you could go to Europe, you could go to India, you could go wherever, like wherever there are financial systems, or like, especially like capital markets. So what is a capital market? Capital market is that you could basically build a business out of your garage, but then someone out there, a venture capitalist, the stock exchange, or someone, they'll give you money, right? So the reason they're able to give you money is because the profession of auditing, what auditors do is they go and basically check that every company is basically they're doing their books right? So it's sort of like auditors are like sort of police on companies in a way. So that was always very interesting to me, and like how you would go and audit companies and like find things that they've like misrepresented, or things that they've gotten wrong. At times you would find fraud. So things like that. That was very interesting, actually. And that's why like my first job was actually as an auditor.
Are there any participants who have considered any of the areas that Wali has talked about so far? Finance,
yes, inshallah.
auditing.
I'm
Who is that?
wanting to Hamid, Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, like I said.
My plan is to major in business next year, but I'm going into business analytics, but I would also like to double major with finance and go towards the financial and technology sector, like fintech.
That's a great accomplishment.
And you're a high school senior right now, or freshman?
Yes,
senior.
high school senior.
Yeah. Is there anyone else with any interest in these areas?
I'm considering double major in economics and maybe consulting as a pathway.
Okay, and he's a freshman in college. It's just the two of them. Okay, good. So I don't know if you have any if that helps you to speak about any particular things, but anyway, I just wanted to see who was interested.
So I would say, economics, finance, both great majors. One thing I would like to mention is that in most of the business majors, but in particular with finance and economics, you have to be very mindful of the school that you choose. And you basically don't choose your school based on some rankings or whatnot. The way you choose your school is basically you ask, when you're interviewing at colleges, when you're going visiting colleges, like when you go to the Department of Finance or Department of Economics, you need to ask them who recruits here on an annual basis, who is coming out to recruit here. So if I was a finance major, I would basically expect the Department of Finance to, when you ask them, they're going to give you names like Goldman Sachs. They're going to give you names like BlackRock. They're going to give you names like Blackstone Asset Management. So these types of big investment banks, asset management, private equity. These are the type of companies that you would want to hear them say when and I'm not trying to say okay, that you have to go and work and be an investment banker, but whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? You the way you determine which school is right is basically you ask the college who comes and recruits on campus, because that is really what the birth of that college is, who's coming and recruiting you on the campus. Similarly for economics, right? You'd want the Wall Street Journal company, you would want the US government, you would want other big companies, consulting firms recruiting up there. So that's a question when you look through your colleges, you've got to ask them that questions. And let's say if someone says, okay, so for economics, right, someone could say, oh yeah, McKinsey recruits on our campus. The next question you need to ask them is like, how many graduates are they recruiting? Are they recruiting 2 candidates, two graduates, or are they recruiting like 10 graduates? That's a major major indicator of like how strong the program is or how good the school is. Now, generally, the schools with good ranking would basically have, good answers to these questions. So that's how you would think. But this is like, if you want to go ahead and like work in these professions, like you have to ask those questions up front, because it is incredibly difficult to graduate and then after your graduation look for a job. With the position that you guys are in, the best case scenario or the easiest thing, not the easiest thing, but basically the best thing is if you're on campus, there are good companies, good opportunities coming to you, and you interviewing on campus rather than like graduating and then looking for something. And if you ever feel like, oh, like I don't really, let's say you decide to be a finance major, right? And you're like, oh, okay, like I'm not really sure what I want to do, right? I don't really know, right? Then just go ahead and do that major and at least get that job, right? And then whatever else you want to do, you could figure that out later, right? And if a lot of people just go through their thing and they don't know by 22, 23, like what they exactly want, but it doesn't hurt to just go through the process and get your job, right? Like, and then you can decide later. You could pivot, you could change, or you could just keep going with that job that you have, right? One of the things that I think the generation that's been in high school for the last 10 years, right, or 15 years, I did not do my high school in the United States, but what I've seen is like there's this notion that whatever you do for work has to be the purpose of your life, has to be very inspiring and whatnot. The reality is that that's great if that's the case, but there are millions of people all across the world that they don't like. They love to play golf, or they love to play basketball. Like that's what they want to do, right? Like that. Like they don't have any interest in accounting, finance, or science or mathematics, right? What they want to do is they just want to recite Noha. Like I have friends I have friends who practice 1 hour of Noha every day because that's what their passion is, right? Their work, their jobs, they're doing those jobs to make a living. Their passion is reciting a Noha, and they're really good at it at that. Like they when they would recite, you would have people crying and like they would move like hundreds of people. Like they're that good at reciting a Noha. That's their passion. They're doing a job to make a living. We've had over the last 15, 20 years, we've had these generations coming out of high school. Like, oh, I need to do something at work that has to be my passion. And then what happens is like the way corporate America or like the business life is set up is like nothing meaningful is really achieved in 2 or 3 years, right? So you're out of college, you're full of like, you're all pumped up, you're trying to like achieve something. And the reality is like, you can't really achieve anything in like a year, 2 years, 3 years. Like it takes time to basically get meaningful fulfillment out of your career, right? So now you're trying to find that fulfillment, let's say in economics or accounting or whatever, right? But the reality would be, the reality is that you're not going to get that in 2, 3 years, or some people even look more short term. So if finance is your passion, or nursing is your passion, or medicine is your passion, that's fantastic. If accounting is your passion, fantastic. If I don't know, like if French is your passion, fantastic. But if it is not, that's not the end of the world. Like your passion could be basketball or golf, and you could do that on the weekends, or your passion could be just learning about Islamic literature or Islamic history, right? It's fine, and you can find a decent job that helps you make a living. I've seen very, very bright students who went to college with me, extremely smart, extremely gifted, but they just had this incorrect notion that I'm going to go into the corporate world, and I'm going to change the world in 2 years or in 3 years. That's just not how it works. And I've seen in my like college generation, a lot of kids just not really going anywhere, or a lot of extremely bright kids not really going anywhere because they have this like unrealistic expectations of what the world is.
So, Wali, let's just pause right there. In Chicago, it's prayer time, so we'll pray Maghrib, and then we'll come back. I'll pause the recording in the meantime.
Like falling for this, that your work has to be your passion. And they start in the corporate world, and it's not. And they just don't really go anywhere from there. Like they make like career moves, or they make life choices that are like, that very clearly have turned out to be not great.
Can you give an example that would kind of show that problem?
Like I'll give an example. There was a girl in my class in college, extreme, like, leadership, academics, like the way she talked, like public speaking, like she ticked all the boxes, right? She had like 11 internship offers. Like there were like 11 companies who wanted to like recruit her. She took for whatever reason, she did an internship with a good firm, and then like she basically said, okay, I don't want to do accounting. Instead, what I want to do is Teach for America. So I don't know if you guys know what Teach for America is. Basically, in Teach for America program, you become a teacher for 2 years in quote unquote what they describe as a disadvantaged like territory or disadvantaged school district. And then from there on, okay, like, what do you do? So she did that, and like that was her way of thinking. I think that was her way of thinking, okay, I'm gonna help the students, or I'm gonna like change the system, or like do something from an education point of view. Fast forward 8-9 years, obviously, like that girl, like she's not in the education profession, she's not in the accounting profession. I think very few people know what she's not married. It's not like she was in a profession and then she chose to be like, choose a like homemaker path. So it was like one of unrealistic expectations that I'm going to change the world in 2, 3, 4 years, right? Similarly, what was I going to say? There are other similar examples where there was a girl who started in the same college, and then we both started at the same company, KPMG. And she wanted to do something that was more
Your sound is the sound clear for you all? So sometimes your sound is breaking up a little bit. I don't know if there's anything you can do to change that.
For me too.
How about now?
It's good now.
Yeah. Okay. So similar story was another girl, same college, same company we both went to. She was a great student, great worker, but then she wanted to do something in the animal cruelty space, in the not-for-profit space. And she basically made certain career moves where, like, fast forward 6-7 years, she's not in the not-for-profit world, and she's not where she could have been in the accounting profession. She's still in accounting profession, but not where she could have been, and she's definitely not in the not-for-profit profession. So, in the like,
can I just can I contrast that with you? So like participants, you should also know, like, Wali cares very much for these things he's talking about, the disadvantaged and the like with the cause of the nonprofit. like his work with who is Hussain, and I know we've done some other work together, and I've observed him. So he cares about those things. He's not speaking like someone who only thinks that making money in the corporate world is the best thing, and
Mhm.
you shouldn't care about people. But I think what you're saying maybe is this correct? Like if you become successful in your career and have
Mhm.
like position and skills and money and those kinds of things, then you can actually be more useful in doing those other meaningful things than if
Yes.
you give up your career or compromise your career and then kind of flounder around and you don't find any fulfillment or success or anything like
Mhm.
that, then you're not useful.
E- 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 Exactly.
That's what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And if you think your calling is something else, right? Let's say it's a not-for-profit, or let's just say it's Islamic studies, right? Like, be very sure, like that, like the 2 years is not gonna like to complete your. I'm just gonna use this like Islam, like jurists or not jurists, but who like what's the right word for like becoming a Hujjatul Islam, right? It's it's
Yeah.
it's not a 2 year, 3 year, or 4 year journey. Like, I mean, it's especially if you go to Iraq, or like it's a long journey. Like, these things don't happen in a year or 2 years. Like, and if you truly do find anything, like, and then same goes for, like, let's say, I've seen people who worked in like South Side, like inner city Chicago education. That's their passion. They want to solve for like help people get better, like kids in Chicago have better education. It takes years, if not decades, to have meaningful fulfillment. It's not a 1, 2, 3 year journey.
Mhm. Very good. And
Um,
so those examples, so you gave women's examples. So I just like one of the messages that we've been trying to communicate about women is that maybe like professional life and careers are not are certainly not the only choice and maybe not the best choice. So maybe like what if a woman gets educated, highly educated even, but then she chooses to be a homemaker and raise her kids, that doesn't mean that she's now unsuccessful in life, for instance. But she's made a decision to use her education for something else that's maybe not, it doesn't make money, but it makes the family very strong or happy, or those kinds of things, and maybe improves community. But I think,
yeah.
I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking not
So
about women who chose, for instance, um, they actually wanted to be in the professional life, but they
yes.
maybe made bad choices in that
Mhm.
professional progression and didn't get anywhere there.
Mhm.
Right? Do you
Yes.
see a
So
difference between what you're talking about, those examples, and this other ideal, which actually, maybe the woman should, a Muslim woman should aspire to being, someone who's the center of the household.
yeah. So so this is where my thinking actually uh, evolved, Sheikh, over the years. And so when I got married, and in the early years of my marriage, right, my viewpoint was, like, a wife could just go to work, or she can just choose not to work. It's up to her, and like she can do what they want, like what she wants, right?
The sound is breaking up again.
I mean to say, like, in
Yeah.
my early years when I got married, uh, I did not have a leaning. I thought that my wife, she could work or she could stay at home. It's her choice. I'll support her either way. And in my early years, I actually did support my wife to complete her college degree. So it took about 3 to 4 years, and I supported her to get through her degree, which was not easy. Getting married and then the next 3 to 4 years, your wife goes to college. That's not easy. So it was, but things changed when I had my first son, my first child. Now I have two children. Things changed when I had my first one. And what changed was, we had the choice that we could send our son to a daycare, or my wife could just stay at home. So there are two choices, right? Uh, my wife, for some reason, just does not want to send children to daycare. So that's like that. But even besides that, right? Like, what my opinion changed was that, look, like, like the purpose of my life, like everything I'm doing at the end of the day, right? Like I'm trying to be like a good human being, good Muslim, right? And I'm trying to like I'm trying to pass it on, right? How can I give my children for 7 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week to someone else? Like for even another Shia Muslim, right? Even another Shia Muslim, like forget about a non-Muslim, or like a non-Shia, right? Like that's a difference. For like, how can I do that? Like, how would I like I want to talk to my son. I tell like I like I just animate the Battle of Khyber. 8 years old, and I just animated the Battle of Khyber and like narrate that to my son, right? Like that's like me taking. So one of the things that I said, okay, our kids, like one of us has to like stay at home. Like if my wife would not, I will, right? Because we cannot give our kids to someone else. I like we wanna give the upbringing that we want to our kids, right? And that it's not upbringing is not like a 3 hours a day thing, right? Like it's a 24/7 thing. Like it involves them seeing you like doing namaz. It involves them like seeing you doing matam, or like you do all the things that you do, right? Like akhlaq, Quran, Ahl Bayt, all of these things. Like how can I give my son to someone else? Like I just cannot. So at that point, both of us were on the same page that regardless of anything else, like money, career aspirations, whatever, right? If we've chosen to have a child, then it is our responsibility, our obligation to give them the upbringing. Like we chose to have a child, like it's our obligation to give them the upbringing. Like and upbringing is not like 3 hours a day. It's 24/7. Like I can't give my kid to 7 hours a day to someone else. And basically do up. Now that there may be scenarios where like I may have to do like hire a babysitter, or like there's a time and place for everything. Every now and then I may need like help, or me and my wife may need help. But that was my thought. It was very difficult for me to say, okay, like someone else will basically be raising my kid. That was very difficult. So hence my opinion changed. I think one of the things, if you want to give back to society, my job in accounting is not helping society, right? It's helping me, it's helping companies, right? The best way I can give back to society is raise my son to be a good citizen, to be a good human, a good Muslim, right? That's my contribution that's my wife's contribution. Like my wife can work at JCPenney, like she's not helping the society over there. The way she's helping the society is helping our kids be good citizens, good Muslims, good Shias. So in other words, for my wife, like our calling, like how boring would it be if she says, okay, my because she majored in technology. Like, I mean, like how boring would it be if she said, oh, like my calling is technology and working in the IT department of JCPenney, or working, I don't know, like even working at Apple, right? Compared to you basically raising a generation to be good citizens and good Muslims.
Can I ask you about ethical and like kind of fiqh legal problems? So if you're working in accounting or in finance in these different fields, in a system where interest is, of course, a major part of it, and then haram businesses. So how do you navigate that? What are the challenges, and then how have you what are solutions that you found to stick to Islam while dealing with a system like this?
So if you're working in accounting, like you're not, so I am not working for an institution that charges interest. However, I have clients, so basically there are companies who've hired my firm, and I'm part of the team where, like, of course, those companies take out loans and whatnot. Sometimes those companies are the one who issue loans. So the most I've had to do is basically, okay, certain companies pays interest, like how do you account for it? And that's the most I've dealt with it. So there's not been a lot of interest-related ethical dilemmas.
Is that normal, or you just you made choices that put you in that position?
If you choose to be in the field that I am in, like, you generally would not be, like, the most you could get asked for is how do you account for, so some company says I did a transaction and, like, I'm paying interest on something, tell me how to account for it. Like, I'm neither designing or I'm not part of the process that helps them make a choice whether they want to do something that may or may not involve interest. Like, they've made their choice, they've done it. Like, all I'm going to do is basically at maximum just tell them, okay, this is how you should account or report for it going forward. And what I've been doing, like what exactly I've come across it a few times, but not very often. So if you choose accounting, like, unless you choose to work for a bank, like, more likely, like, you would be in a scenario where you would not be in a situation, like, there are very high chances that you will not have to make, like, decisions regarding interest or regarding, like, riba. That was actually one of the things I thought, like, between finance and accounting. Like, if you go to finance, you're actually making decisions. Do I take a loan from bank A or bank B? What's better? Like, that's you in sitting in a finance department at a company. If you're sitting in an accounting department, you're not making that decision. Someone already made the decision, and as an accountant, you're just basically accounting for it.
Any other ethical dilemmas
Yes.
that you face or you've seen in the industry?
Yes. So when we were auditors, right, we have to basically go through a company's financial statements, which is basically a company saying, I made this much money in a given year, right? And as simple as it may sound to you, right, there is a lot of judgment and gray area whether what a company did was correct or not. So I'll give you an example, right? Let's say, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say let's say all of us are a construction company, right? Let's say, and we have to build a hospital. And for building that hospital, we're going to get $10 million. And this hospital will be constructed over a period of 3 years. But let's just say we received all 10 million of the payment on day one, right? And then first year goes by. How much revenue am I going to recognize? So revenue meaning income, like gross income. How much income have I earned in my year number one? So, like, here's the test for all of you. What do you think we've earned in the first year? I've received all 10 million on day one, and it's a 3-year project. At the end of year one, like, what do you think we've earned? So
it could be 1/3 of the 10 million.
It could be 1/3, but in reality, how it happens, Sheikh, is basically in that sort of an environment, big projects, you can't just do 10 million divided by 3. What you have to do is you have to make an assessment. Okay, to do this 10 million project, I was going to spend 6 million in cost. How much of that 6 million have I spent in 1 year? If I've only spent 1 million of the 6, which is much, and 1/6 of the cost, so I'm going to recognize 1/6.
We lost your voice again. So go back to this. If you spend 6 million of the 10 million, then what?
So let's say to complete a 10 million project,
yeah,
I have to spend 6 million in cost, materials, labors, etc., etc. Let's say in year number one, I spent only 1 out of those 6 million. So hence 1/6, right? So what the rules tell me is that I've earned 1/6 of my total project fee, which is 10 million. So 1/6 times 10 million, whatever that comes out to be. that is my actual earnings. So what happens is, so this is one example. Like this, there are many examples where there's such complex calculations. So what would happen in this scenario is a client would want to say that, oh, I've actually spent 1.5 million. So we would go and audit that, and we say, oh, have you really spent 1.5 million or 1.2 million? So they're trying to overstate what they've earned. So they're going to always try and overstate what they've earned. So we have to basically be skeptical, and there are a lot of gray areas where we have to exercise judgment. And sometimes we agree with what the client has done or what a company has done, and at times we disagree. And when we disagree, it's not nice. It's not nice for them. It's not nice for us. It's not nice for anyone. Because when we disagree, it means the company has to go back and change something, correct something. It involves a lot of efforts, a lot of hours, late nights, a lot of explanations, a lot of people asking questions. Why are you asking for this change? Like, you have to explain the same thing like 20 different times. But the ethical dilemma happens a lot in the auditing profession. Like every day you see there is an ethical dilemma that, okay, where do I really draw the line? Like, is it really this or this? Like, has the client gotten it right? So those sort of things come very often in the auditing profession.
And then since they're the ones, isn't it the client who's hiring you as the auditor? So it's kind of a voluntary, like
that's right.
I'm hiring the police to come in and check out whether I'm legal or not legal, right?
Right. But if we say that they've done something wrong, so the way it works is, at every public company there's a board, and then under the board there is CEO, CFO, and like all the C-suite. So the board hires us. So if we say that this is wrong, the board, and if the board has to agree with us. So the board has the power to fire the CFO, fire the CEO, and so on and so forth. So that's how there's checks and balances. So even though the client has hired us, it's really the board that's hired us. And if we say the company is doing something wrong, then the board will take that feedback and give that feedback to the CFO or CEO. And basically, even though they've hired us, we're sort of in the position of power from a decision perspective.
Let's pause there and see, are there any questions from the participants about the career path or any of the other things we've talked about so far?
Yeah, so I wanted to ask the main difference between accounting and finance. What I've heard is that accounting is like you're just looking at the past, versus finance, you're looking for things in the future. Could you like elaborate on that maybe a little bit?
Yeah, so accounting is primarily looking at the past. However, accountants are always asked about questions of the future, about like what's going to happen in the future. The other thing is, accounting is what they say, accounting is the source of truth. So basically what happens is, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're in a finance department and your boss asks you to give them a forecast of what a certain department is going to earn in the next 5 years, right? But the way you're going to build your forecast is you're going to start with the accounting number. The accounting is going to tell you what was your number in the prior year. So that's your source of truth. So you start there. Okay, this department X earned $5 million in 2022. That's your starting point. From 5 million, it's going to go to 5.5, then 6, then 6.5. So finance is more future oriented. Accounting is relatively more historical oriented, but everything finance related has to come back to accounting, because accounting is like the accounting numbers are always the source of truth, and finance is just, the finance numbers are more about future, and it's always like a It's always like a beautiful picture of the future, which may or may not be true.
Got it. Thank you.
Can we I think I want to ask you also about your extracurricular, so like the meaningful work that you now do with
Yeah.
Hussain or some of the other things. Like is there a link between your professional skills and what you're able to do in the meaningful work, or no, it's just the job just makes a living for you and your family, and then separately you do things that you find meaningful that may have nothing to do with your work as an accountant or work in finance. Is one of those models true?
Yeah, I would say the latter is true. I started with
Okay.
Hussain. I started with Hussain right when I was in college. And the reason when I introduced myself, I did not mention Hussain is because if I introduce myself as a member of Hussain, then like my introduction should end there. Like there is no other position that needs mentioning after like being a volunteer for Hussain. Like that's the supreme, that's the end all be all. Like whether I am whatever in this world, like that doesn't matter, right? So that is, if someone was to, if I was to die tomorrow and like someone was to ask me, what have you done like meaningful in this life? Like I'm probably gonna mention like one or two projects related to Hussain. Like in my 32 years of life, like that's probably the only thing. Meaningful contribution. There's like everything else is just like you have to do it because you have to survive and thrive in this world as a human being, and it's your personal matter. But like what really makes you a human is like things that you find meaning in and things that you do for like the broader humanity or your religion, and you can perfectly do those things while having a career in medicine or having a career in accounting or finance. But the key part is that you have to do that because that is what's meaningful. Like you're making money for yourself, and that's great. And every now and then you're going to make a donation. That's fantastic. But what's meaningful is really what you've contributed to, others. I think what you've contributed to community, society. At least that's my thought.
So for you, it sounds like you did both together. You were able to, you said you
Yes.
got involved with Hussain early on, and then it's just continued, maybe grown.
Yes.
Sometimes I see the model as kind of like put your head down, work, and live a corporate life, and like kind of focus entirely on career for some period of time. And then at some point, maybe in the mid 30s, 40s, the person has a crisis and realizes that their life's empty, and then they find meaning at that point. But it sounds like you were able to, kind of
Yes.
make the both grow together at the same time.
Yes, I was able to do it. It was difficult, so it's definitely not easy to balance that with school first and then with work. It's it has become difficult as time has gone on and life has moved on. But while you could take maybe a year or so to focus on work, I think, but anything more than that, I think is naive. Like if you think you're going to focus on work for 5 years and then one fine day you're going to have more time, I would find that hard to believe because life gets busier and your energy level gets lower as you progress. So
what let me understand what you just said. So you're saying right in college, or right when you're, in the thick of it, you should already be doing these meaningful things, right?
I think so. I think so.
Otherwise, the turn will never come for those things in any meaningful way.
It would be based on my experience that your life generally will get busier with family as your family expands. And then, at least for me, my energy level has dropped significantly compared to what I was at 24, 25, now that I'm 32. So if someone, like some people may be able to do this, but I think the thought of that, okay, the thought of like focusing only on work in your early 20s and then one fine day in your early 30s, you're going to give back to the community. At least the way I've experienced life, I think that that's a very difficult thing to do. I think what's more practical is that whatever you're passionate about, whether that's like, you know, Ramadan programs or like any non-for-profit or like much less like Imam Barga, you have to get in the weeds, and you have to like start doing it, contributing in it in your like early 20s, if not teens. Because I used to go, like, when you're in your energy, like energy is a big factor, and the energy that you have in your late teens and then early 20s, like it's hard to comprehend at that point, but that energy level is going to change when you're in your 30s.
So we're just about out of time. If there are any last questions, otherwise we'll close. All right. Well, thank you so much, Wali, for your time and for sharing all your experiences.
Thank you so much, Sheikh. And if anyone has if any of you guys, or if any of your friends in the community, if they have any questions around profession of accounting, the finance related questions, or like even economics, even though I'm in the accounting profession, I very closely work with people who are in finance and economics. If anyone wants to just like get any thoughts or feedback, or just any ideas, want to bump any ideas, I'd be very happy to share my thoughts.
Very good. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Assalamu alaikum.
Bye.